Hello and welcome to the Metal Pack Pod, the podcast dedicated to the global metal packaging industry. This podcast is brought to you by the Metal Packager, and I am your host, Alex Fordham. For those of you who have not yet subscribed, visit metalpackager.com/subscribe. Here you'll get access to a number of offerings including email newsletters, text alerts, and full access to our premium feature content. Now on to today's show. Today we welcome Brian Sneed from Raceline & Associates. As President and Chief Operating Officer of Raceline & Associates, he has nearly 30 years' experience in working with clients to provide project services, implementations including initial business development, proposal generation, contract negotiations, and active financial management. He started his career at Raceline circa 1991 as an intern, returning to the company later as accounting manager. He has since led the company in various roles ranging from business development to project management. Over his tenure at Raceline, the company has grown from 20 employees in a single office to nearly 1,000 employees worldwide, spread across 10 global office locations. We talked about the rapid growth in the sector, the company's expansion plans, and maintaining the company ethos, the Raceline way. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining me. How are you?
Oh, excellent, Alex. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. As customary on our podcast, got a set of quick-fire questions. So without further ado, we'll get things started. So what would you say is your favourite metal packaging product ever?
I think the Red Bull Slim Can is probably the product that comes to mind for me, just because I really feel like it ignited this entire industry. We've seen nothing but growth since the introduction of that product in that can.
Absolutely. And you always associate Red Bull with a can as well, which I think is a fantastic message there. From working arrangements, do you prefer things as they are now, or do you prefer things pre-pandemic, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm ready to get back more towards what it was pre-pandemic. Certainly travel is a huge part of what we do, right? So our projects are not just outside of St. Louis, but they're mostly outside of North America. So traveling is something that I want to get back to internationally, but I think eventually just striking a balance. I think there have been some good things that have come out of kind of the remote working and the teams meetings and so forth. So I think we just need to strike a balance going forward.
Your proudest achievement in the industry?
You know, I would say for our company, it's the fact that the first customer that we started with 31 years ago was Ball, and they're still our biggest customer, and they're still a customer. And we really haven't lost any customers in that period of time. And I think that's something that we're very proud of.
Absolutely. You must be doing something right. And so metal packaging innovation that you're most excited about moving forward?
I think it's the war on plastics. I think just the ability to convert so many different types of beverages and different drink categories and convert them from plastic into metal is something I'm very excited about.
The final one before we get things started, the biggest challenge for Raceline moving forward?
I think it's resources. I mean, that's the thing. We've invested quite a bit of money in facility and automation and equipment. And now it's just finding the people in each of our different divisions, whether it's professional services, manufacturing, or construction. A lot of competition for those resources globally.
Is that a particular problem in the can making industry because it's very conservative in its approach, and also the fact that good people are very hard to come by? And you see, certainly when we're at trade shows across the globe, you see that people working for particular companies have been there 30 years, 40 years, and to have good people is very difficult to come by, and particularly young people. Is that something you're mindful of at Raceline?
Yeah, I think it's twofold for us. So a lot of what we do is either manufacturing or construction, and no secret that people coming up, you know, and looking at career choices, using their hands and having a craft labor type profession is something that we're struggling to recruit more and more people into that. So there's a finite number of those resources. And then the other challenge that we have is just the travel load, right? So just being in construction and having to do the amount of travel that we ask of our resources. Those are the two major limiting factors for us, I would say right now.
So So, Brian, it's fair to say that the industry is certainly booming. I've looked into your background ahead of this conversation and seeing that you were an apprentice with Raceline, so you've certainly seen some changes during the years that you've spent with the company. Is it fair to say that you've never seen quite so much demand within the industry as we have now?
Absolutely. It's certainly a unique time. And every time over the last 5 years that we thought that we were hitting a plateau, it seems like we've hit another gear. And so currently what we're looking at is certainly an unprecedented record in terms of the amount of activity.
With regards to how Raceline have adapted, we did mention earlier there about the sort of old or new normal with working arrangements. Being a global company, has that been something that has been a challenge for you guys, and running a successful company? How have you adapted personally?
So, certainly once we started into the pandemic, we had a little bit of a preview of it because we have the operation in Shanghai. So we were able to get out in front of it a little bit, as much as you could with, there's no playbook for what we just went through and a lot of uncertainty, but it was probably just a good bit of luck that we had just completed our regional expansion. So we started up in Brazil and in Poland. Of course, we have Shanghai. So we're pretty well positioned regionally throughout the world. And we really just had to rely on those local teams to carry us through. And then, of course, with the majority of work being here in North America, that was critical. I mean, for us, we had employees of ours still supporting the job sites where we were at. Some of them were driving literally from New York to California. I think that was the longest single trip. But we had guys going from the Midwest out to, Utah and other places. So really hats off to our team for not missing a beat and stepping up to the challenge.
I've also listened to another podcast that you've appeared on, and you mentioned about the fact that running a successful business is very much about getting the right personnel on board. So it sounds like they've really been important during this period.
Yeah, it absolutely has. I mean, I think it ties into our employee stock ownership program. We call it an ownership mentality. And I think without that, we would have really struggled, because we were asking people to look at the fact that we were deemed as an essential business. They all took that challenge, and quite honestly, there were some unknown risks. We were very, very, very fortunate that we had the type of response and resilience and just dedication from our team.
And you completed on 15 can lines during 2020, so you must have been doing something right. So yeah, if you can give us a bit of background about the challenges involved there.
Yeah, I think getting people to and from the job sites was a big challenge. And also, you're looking at these job sites where you're putting on site maybe 200 personnel. And so obviously the challenge of keeping them at a safe distance from each other, getting guys to wear masks and keep those masks on when maybe the climate made that uncomfortable due to the heat. So yeah, we definitely dealt with challenges every day. Our board would meet every morning, first thing, and kind of a roundtable of what happened overnight, what happened since the last time we met the day before. And we were constantly juggling and really relying on each other and looking at some of our peers for best practices. But I think the name of the game was trying to stay on top of it, not getting caught by a surprise. And I think the constant communication within our own organization and with our key customers and suppliers, I think it just took that to get through it. I don't have one particular difficult, instance or scenario to give you. I would just say every one of our job sites and every one of our locations was challenged at some point in time over the last 18 months. And despite all of that, we were able to still complete the 15 projects on time.
And I mean, from a personal point of view, I know certainly myself, it's been challenging working essentially in one room in my house for over a year now. It seemed a lot longer, but how about yourself? Has the situation in the US been different here in the UK? I mean, have you been predominantly home-based, or have you been in the office? How's your day-to-day role changed during the past few months?
It was difficult for me to really kind of come to terms with what my work schedule was going to look like, because on one hand, we wanted to do and follow the guidance where they were saying, if you can work from home, the preference was everybody that could work from home should work from home. But at the same time, knowing that 2/3 of our employees, so about 600 of the 900 employees that we have, are either in manufacturing or construction. So it's just not feasible for them to work from home and still be productive. So most of the time I was still coming into the office. We were keeping some group of management in the office. And then I was traveling to some of the various job sites and our different facilities, at least domestically, just to show that support and make sure that they knew that we were there to support them. And make sure that they were given everything that they possibly could be to make their work safe, endure that. I mean, at one point we were, for about 3 or 4 months when it first started, we were actually providing lunch and dinner to all of our employees. So, I mean, it was a twofold benefit. Number one, we figured if people didn't have to have those extra touches, whether it be a restaurant or takeout, and it was just convenient for them, it was safer. So that was obviously a benefit to the employees. But then also, we really wanted to support those local restaurants. I think so many of these businesses that, to no fault of their own, have found themselves out of business. And so we really just wanted to support those local communities. And so that was one of the things that we tried to do to help everyone cope.
I think that's really refreshing to hear. I mean, I think it's easy to take for granted how busy we've been. I mean, the fact that this industry is booming, whereas other industries haven't been quite so fortunate. So, no, that's really great to hear. I mean, I just want to move things forward. We've seen, certainly in the trade press during the past few months, of some of the leading suppliers within the industry, the likes of CMB, Slack, Stolly, move forward with expansion plans, and you guys are no different. And there's been some really exciting news during the past couple of weeks. So it's a nice opportunity here, Brian, if you could just explain in a little bit more detail about your expansion plans.
Absolutely. So we were fortunate to have really good line of communication with our key customers going back, even 3 years ago. They were able to pull us into some of their strategic planning without divulging any confidential information, just give us some idea of what their next 24, 36 months look like. So over the last 5 years, we've actually invested about $75 million into our business. And that's a combination of acquisition. We've made acquisitions of Pride Conveyor, we've acquired Sager Metal, and then we've also made an acquisition in Poland as well. So our latest expansion was into Brazil, and that was just prior to the pandemic. And then we also, for this year, are looking to expand. Last year, we added about 50,000 square feet in Redbud, Illinois, and that's dedicated space for conveyance manufacturing. So all of that has really served us well. Without those investments and without the heads up and the communication from the customer base, we just simply would not have been able to react that quickly. So it has been a coordinated effort over the last 3 to 5 years, and it has been a pretty substantial investment on our part. The latest thing that we've announced is that we have now formed a group within our construction services division, and the group is going to be dedicated to the design and construction of the buildings themselves. So the infrastructure that houses the can manufacturing equipment.
Is the main rationale for this capacity, or is it more to have the autonomy over the whole project? Just curious from my part, is that a twofold approach, or is it more to do with capacity?
It doesn't have as much to do with capacity. It has to do more with, we used to have 16 months to do a project. That was pretty typical, 16-month schedule. Then it went down to 12. Currently, we're really close to 9 months. I'd say we're doing some projects. That's about average for us as a 9-month schedule. And now we're being challenged to do it faster. We've had one customer throw out the gauntlet of 6 months. And so really what we're looking to do is just say, if we're going to improve the schedule that we have now, some of the major OEMs have to look at their lead times. We have to look at our own manufacturing processes. But ultimately, we see the long lead item being the building itself. So using our experience, because we have extensive experience with the building construction. So coupling that with the process, we just feel like that's going to be the best way to optimize and reduce schedule.
And you got Dean Foff on board as well to help manage this project.
Yeah, I mean, Dean comes to us. He's got 40 years of experience in building construction. So he's got familiarity with all that goes into the nuances. You see some of these buildings we're constructing now are over 1 million square feet. So it's a substantial structure, and it's a whole nother subject matter expertise to do that right. And so we brought in Dean. We wanted to make sure that we were going into this not just with our own subject matter expertise, but also getting somebody that really has lived this their entire career.
I'm curious as well, this latest expansion plan, I mean, has this been in the offering for the past few months, or has this been years in the making, or is this purely pandemic driven?
It is something that we have been involved in, I would say, going back as far as 20 years. But it's been more on a case-by-case basis where our customer has asked us to be involved. So we have done a project just over maybe 6 years ago where we we're the full turnkey supplier, including the building construction. We currently have 3 ongoing projects where we are the building. We have the responsibility of the building. So it's an ongoing live offering, right? So we've been doing it for many years as the customer has requested it, but now we're actually being very proactive about pursuing that work and offering it to our customer.
That's interesting. I mean, just on the sort of general trend side, I mean, do you think this growth that we're seeing, in fact, that can makers and suppliers have had to increase this expansion very quickly, do you think is this pandemic driven, or is this the ongoing sustainability message in the industry during the past sort of 3 to 5 years? I mean, what's your take on things? Is now the perfect storm? Would this have happened anyway? The fact the industry has had to really mobilize itself really quickly to act on this demand that we're seeing, particularly in the beverage can industry?
Well, we were already prepared in working with customers for an expansion pre-COVID. So we did see this coming. And obviously, the pandemic, I think it had a lot to do with the stock out, right? The can shortage, if you will. But I just think there's so many different variables going into what is driving the can demand. I think it's all the new product categories. I do think it's sustainability. I think it's conversion of existing products from glass or plastics into aluminum. This is the one statistic that I give a lot of people, that traditionally about a third or 35%, let's say, of beverages, all categories, were packed in aluminum, right? And today, new product categories are going and adopting aluminum at almost 80%. So if you've got a carbonated water, or you have one of these ready to drink alcoholic beverages, or the seltzers, or even craft breweries, I mean, they are adopting cans 8 out of 10 times. So that's more than double what the traditional pack mix was. So I just have to say that that's telling us something. That's telling us a lot about what consumers want. I think that's really why I remain very optimistic that this growth is sustainable.
Yeah, I think you're right, because particularly in North America, our sky is the other side of the pond. We tend to be 3 to 5 years behind on trends. So I think that the fact that you've had 11 new can plants in the US during the past, I think since 2018, suggests that this growth is only going to be seen in Europe and the rest of the world in a few years' time as well. I mean, we're on the cusp of things here in Europe, particularly on the hard seltzer canned wine side of things. But it's really exciting to see all these new product innovations, and the fact that you've got your choice of beverage in a can. I think it's fantastic to see, and not just having your Coca-Colas of this world. I mean, terrific products they are. It's great to see the choice from different brands, and I think it's really great for the consumer.
I'll just give you one more data point for at least North America. Our experience is that when you asked if it was pandemic driven, obviously that has a lot to do with the multi-pack and the takeaway or in-store purchase to take home for consumption. But in our convenience stores and gas stations and the like, we are seeing a total conversion of one-way beverages into aluminum. I mean, if you're standing in line to check out at a local C-store, you look to your right and you got somebody with a Monster energy drink. You look to your left, they might have an iced tea in a can. You look behind you and somebody's got a Red Bull or a cold coffee. I mean, it's really taking hold, and that's the exciting thing that I see going on. It's not just the take-home business. It really is that single-serve market that's picking up a lot of momentum as well.
Is there a danger of complacency in the industry? Because the fact that we are so busy, you almost take your eye off the ball a little bit there with the fact that this growth is being seen. But if you're not careful, you said about you're excited about taking on the plastics industry, which I think is terrific. But if the industry and guys with the key players are so busy just keeping up with the demand, is there a danger that the innovations gradually drop off?
I'm not too concerned about that right now, just because of the fact that I think the consumers are really driving a lot of it. Right? The consumer's choice of what beverage container they want to use is the communication that they're giving through their purchase power to the fillers. And then in turn, those fillers are, looking at the can makers to supply that need. So I don't believe that as an industry, we've ever, suffered from complacency. And I really see to the opposite. I see a lot more positive news and a lot of motivation by the can makers and the supply chain to really capitalize on this. I think it was in one of the recent symposiums I sat in, one of the can makers said, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, this truly is something that a lot of industries only see one or two times in their entire life cycle. So I think that each of the can makers in the supply chain are reacting, and we're trying to capitalize on great opportunity.
No, that's great to hear. And I certainly agree with your sentiment. I hope you're correct with that hypothesis. Yeah, it's really, really exciting for the industry to see. Another key aspect going on in the can making industry at the moment is carbon footprint and being sustainably minded, environmentally friendly, because we have the product, but we also have to make sure that everything else we do is with sustainability in mind. So I'm just curious with Raceline, is that something that you guys are very mindful of, that to be a sustainable business and talking about metal packaging, you have to sort of talk the talk and walk the walk, don't you, really? So is there, if you can just have a snapshot of what you guys are doing to ensure you're sustainably minded?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, we have an initiative internally. It's called the Raceline Way. It has multiple facets or pillars to it. We've got charitable giving, community service, diversity and inclusion, continuing education, and also environmental stewardship. So we have committees that span across each of our locations globally, and they're meeting every other week, and they're actually putting forth initiatives in each of those categories so that we want to really have reach outside of our own organization and show how, our own success can affect the communities in which we live, and really kind of be a promoter of those types of initiatives. So one of those, of course, being the environmental stewardship. The first thing that we're really looking to pick up on is the can makers' push to increase the recycling rates. And so we're going to outfit each of our locations and every one of our job site trailers, and across the entire company, we're going to have dedicated bins for the recycling. And we're actually going to have a little bit of a competitive nature to it within our company to see how many cans we can recycle. We're looking at other things like solar at some of our major facilities, just to see if we can reduce the use of that electricity off the local grid. So it's certainly, we're very mindful of it. We're also involved outside of the can industry. We also have a large footprint with renewable natural gas plants that we're building. And that's literally converting animal waste into natural gas that would heat a home or fuel a car. So our entire company is really right now very much involved in this push for sustainability. Our customers that's really what has us in business and is fueling our growth.
Yeah, I mean, certainly doing my research, seeing that some of the initiatives you're involved in, Women in Business, Fostering Futures campaign, is that a real strategy that particularly yourself, you've inherited from Rudy Raceline, that to be a successful business, it has to be almost a community business that everyone buys into? Is that something that you're certainly mindful of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's just being good stewards of not just the business itself and the results that we gain there, but ultimately it's something I said to each of the different committee leads on this Raceline Way initiative. I said, of course, the primary objective is to have a really positive impact on each of those initiatives. But the other thing that we're hoping is that our employees really benefit from it. There's a certain amount of pride and fulfillment that comes out of doing a community service activity or being involved in a environmental stewardship initiative. So we're really looking for that twofold impact, right? We want it to impact positively our community, but we also want our employees to feel like that we're providing an outlet for them to give back as well.
Speaking about growth in the industry, have we reached the pinnacle in terms of industry demand, or is the best yet to come, do you think?
Going back to what you had mentioned earlier about, do we see this spreading to Europe and other parts of the world? I really think that we're starting to see that activity in Europe. And so exactly what you alluded to, maybe being 2 to 3 years behind that curve, I think we're actually seeing that come to fruition. So I believe the peak of this growth, as we see it right now, I could see that being out in 2023, where you've got a lot of activity in Europe and you're still actively growing things in North America. And we're still seeing a lot of growth in South America. So it really does look like the rest of the world will follow the growth curve of the US.
And do you think there's the challenge with the plastics industry that they will get their act together. I tell my wife off from time to time because she does a habit of occasionally buying bottled water, which goes straight out the window in my house. But I was just curious the other day, I read on the labelling, and they're very, very keen on pushing the whole, this is 100% recyclable, et cetera, et cetera. And gradually that marketing message is starting to be adopted. So do you think it's a particular challenge that we need to be mindful of in the next couple of years, that other packaging formats are going to be on the offensive? And they have been very quiet recently, but the pandemic may have changed things as well. And maybe some people will be less sustainably minded rather than more sustainably minded. Who knows? So is that something that we have to be mindful of?
Well, I'll just tell you, obviously, I'm very biased with my answer here, just like you. Plastics are pretty much forbidden in my household in terms of beverage container. I just take my daughter, who's 16, as an example. With social media and the spread of information and how dynamic that is, for years, she was told that if she put her plastic bottle in a certain color container, in our house, it's a blue container, that was going to go out and the trash people were going to take that and they were going to recycle it. Take that word to mean what it is supposed to mean, which is you break that down and reuse it. Well, only to find out that plastic was being sent over to Asia and basically being put in landfills and other places that ultimately ended up in streams and waterways and carried out into the ocean. That's a really tall task to undo that message. And I can tell you, just looking at my daughter and that generation of people, because we're starting to hire a lot of those employees that are in their early 20s. And it's amazing the questions that we get asked about what's our sustainability model. These are questions that new college graduates are asking. I don't see that going the other way. And I think, the other thing is that for years and years, the plastic industry for plastic bottles has played on the cost delta. And at least in North America, they've made that product so thin that I think it's really eroded the quality that people perceive with that. I think the plastic industry has a number of different challenges. I think the 12-ounce soda can, it looks pretty aged. I mean, it really hasn't changed in 20 or 25 years. And I don't know how you change that. I don't know what they would do to change it. So I think they have an uphill battle. And I just proud to be part of an industry that looks like we're getting a really good running head start, and that the consumers are adopting all these new product categories in aluminum. And that's, like you said, you associate Red Bull with aluminum can. You're going to say the same thing about Monster. We're going to say the same thing about Truly and White Claw and all of the different spiked seltzers. So I'm really bullish on it.
No, I think you're right as well. And particularly what your daughter says, I think is true, that 10 years ago, if you were interested in the environment, sustainability, you were seen as a bit of a left-wing sort of bit of a radical person that don't really know what they're talking about. But these sort of things are now mainstream, and rightly so. So I think it is really exciting. I think the challenge is also making sure that our marketing literature and the information that we're putting out there is engaging enough. I think sometimes that we've in the past tried to go down the message of making it as simple for people to understand. But I think that's probably not enough now. And I think because we're talking about carbon, as we alluded to earlier, we're talking about carbon footprint. We're talking about, you can get apps that measure an individual's carbon footprint and what you emit as a person. And I think we have to maybe go a little bit further. And that's the challenge for marketeers. I certainly don't envy their role anyway. It is really interesting to see how things are moving, and really quickly as well.
Agreed.
One other thing you mentioned as well is that social media. I mean, Raceline, you guys are very proactive in your approach to getting your message out there. So is there anything at all on your sort of marketing side of things that you're particularly pleased with? You guys seem to be one of the more forward thinking in your approach to banging the drum of the industry, and one of the suppliers who are certainly caring about this industry and getting the message across.
Yeah, I think it ties into the constraint that you mentioned, or that I mentioned earlier, in response to, what are some of our greatest challenges, and that's resources. And so I think that the people that you're looking to recruit, and even your retention, right? Just even retaining your current employees, it's really important, to give them information, communication and information about the industry and the trends that we're seeing, and then talking about the different initiatives that we have. are all things that people really do. Feedback we get is people care about that. They want to know that they're working for a company that's doing the right thing for their customers, for their employees, for their suppliers, and also for their community and environment. And so that's really the push for us. I mean, I think within our industry, what we do is pretty well known. We have longstanding customers and we have a long track record of success in this industry. But I think it's as much about just spreading that information to all the new people that are coming into the industry, and that those are the people that are going to carry this industry forward. I mean, if you look at all the people that the can makers are having to hire, we're relying on them to become, subject matter experts in can making. So I think we all have a role in helping to talk about that history and talk about, really, as you said, market all the benefits of the aluminum can.
Is that something that you guys have trouble with, is certainly getting young people being mindful of the industry is in the nicest possible way? Certainly when I came into the industry, I've got to watch what I say here, but of a particular vintage, a lot of people are. So is that a challenge for Raceline, is making sure you get good people and good young people as well?
Yeah, I think it's the mix. I think it's having a good mix. We've had to approach it from both ends, right? We have an internship program. This year, we're going to have over 20 interns. And so we look at that as our farm club, and we've got to be getting these people exposed and get them the necessary training, and as you call it, apprenticeship. And so we're heavily invested in that. And then on the other end, we're looking at the people that anytime we can bring in somebody with a good amount of experience, we're trying to put them in a position where we can leverage that experience to train others. And that's really kind of been our approach, and it's worked. We need more of it.
Yeah, just to round things off, since you took over as president back in 2018. So what are we now, 3.5 years into that period? You probably wouldn't have thought and seen quite so many changes during that period, but no, exciting time. So looking ahead to the next 3.5 years, is there anything that you can share with our listenership about the prospects at Raceline, or is there anything that you can share with us just to conclude the conversation?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because we just completed our 5-year strategic plan. It will be 5 years this October. So actually we finished it about 6 months early. This building design and construction was the last initiative that we needed to complete that entire plan. So we're actually getting together our board of directors, Chairman Rudy, at his farm the next 2.5 days. And it's aimed at exactly that. Where do we see ourselves going 5 years, and kind of what's that roadmap to get there? And so, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of the same. We're going to continue to try to offer more products and services to our existing customers. And I think we'll continue to diversify. This renewable natural gas is certainly something that we feel like it has a really good message and a great market opportunity. But more than anything, we want to continue to be an example of what an employee stock ownership run company can look like. We really are bought into that. And we don't think that it's any just coincidence that when we started the last 5-year plan was also the start. 2014 is the first year of our employee stock ownership program. And if you look at the growth of our company from that time to now, we're really bought into the fact that it makes a difference when employees have part of the ownership of the company. So you're going to continue to see that. You're going to continue to work on our succession plan to make sure that the next generation of leaders at Raceline embody the same principles that our current board of directors has. That's a big part of our focus as a leadership team.
Ryan, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Really excited for your future plans within the business, and best of luck in the future, and hope to see you soon.
Alex, thanks for the opportunity, and I hope next time we get together, it's in person and we can share a beer together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sounds good. Take care.
In a can.
Absolutely.
All the best. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you to Brian for being a real pleasure to interview. It was fascinating learning his thoughts on a wide range of industry topics, and crucially how Raceline are preparing for growth and its recent expansion plans as a result of industry demand for metal packaging. Raceline are a real symptom and shining example of how metal packaging is thriving as an industry, having grown to be 1,000-strong employee base. But this is no accident. Its stock ownership program for employees certainly exemplifies how trusting your staff and letting them take ownership delivers high quality results. I'd appreciate it if you take the time to review this podcast and help spread the word on our podcast and the Metal Packager, the world's fastest growing resource for the global metal packaging market. We'll be back real soon for our next episode. Take care, everybody.